I would like to explain kind of the purpose of a satsang. Like why are we really here? What's the point? So satsang means association with higher truth. And what does higher truth mean? That would be kind of the next question, because even that definition of association with higher truth doesn't make a sense to a lot of people. I said, who wants to hang out with truth? Who's truth anyway? These types of words are hard to explain. So truth is another name for, one could say, the soul. The soul. And so all religions and spiritual traditions really ultimately are searching for the soul, to find the core of their being. Who am I would be another way to say it. What am I? And that really can't be spoken in words. Words cannot define our true essence, what we are. So we use words like truth and soul, but we don't really know what we're talking about. And so many of the yogis would say, well, if you can connect with a master or a prophet or a saint or a great yogi, that if you associate with them, that their energy and their realization would rub off on you. And then you too would have a realization of the sort of essence of what life is. What am I? Who am I? And so I took that idea very seriously. This is like 2006 or something. And I became what you would call a saint chaser. And I just started traveling, great distances, long ways, made huge effort to go and be in the company of great masters, yogis, and saints. And I would just sit with them. And I would bask in their energy and try to meditate to that. And that's how I took in the spiritual teachings. And bit by bit, that changed me. And I became more light. I became more kind of like dissolved, if you want to say it that way. It's really hard to explain, but less dense and more light with my association with them. And as I became more light, so many beautiful qualities came out of that, like love and joy and peace, kindness, sweetness, all the sort of beautiful qualities that we're kind of looking for. That unfolded through my association with these great beings. And though that association is satsang. That's what satsang is. And then ultimately in 2008, I went to New York City from Los Angeles to go visit a great yogi, Himalayan yogi named Sri 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 Swami Purna Maharaj, and I lit a candle for him. And that was in 2008. It was a 4-day retreat, and I just wanted to be in his presence and see, because someone had recommended to go see him. Well, before he walked into that particular bookstore in New York City where we were holding the retreat, I had this movement inside me. It was like my soul moved. Something deep inside me just changed before he even came into the room. And I just had tears in my eyes. I mean, it just didn't really make any sense, but something happened. And then he walked in and began to speak. And he has it's kind of Indian accent, so sometimes it's kind of hard to understand him. But in that case, I really didn't need to understand what he was saying. That wasn't the point. The point was just being with him and feeling this invisible energy, and it was sweeping through my body and my mind and my emotions, and I was buzzing, you could say. And I even remember a little experience during the break, during that retreat. Sometime during the break, I went back to my room was visiting with my 3 other roommates. We were staying at a hotel. And as I was talking with those 3 roommates, suddenly something very strange happened to me. I was no longer in here. I was kind of like watching the whole conversation in the whole room. Everything was being watched, and I wasn't in a location. I said, wow, like I was floored. And I said, what is happening? You know, and that was like the very first retreat that I had with him. And from then on, it became a very, very intense path for me. And he became my sort of official teacher, you want to call it that. And then he didn't really give me any advice, like in terms of like what to do, because I'd like to, you know, if you have a teacher, maybe give me something, some sort of guidance. But every time I would see him, it'd be just like, oh, just keep doing what you're doing. You know, I was chanting, doing a lot of chanting like this, and I was doing pranayama and yoga, and, you know, all the typical yogic practices that we do. And then finally, in 2012, I had a darshan with him, and it was very, very short. It was only 3 minutes long, this meeting with him. And he said, now, Brian, you're ready to renounce your old life and set out on the road and share satsang or gatherings with others across the United States and Canada. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do that. Yes, Guruji. And then after that 3-minute conversation, I left and I said, okay, what do I do now? Because I was running a financial planning business that I had built up for many, many years, was very successful, had a very comfortable life. Everything I had done up to that point was to really build a comfortable, so-called successful life where, you know, the American dream. And I had that. It was easy. And so I went home. At that time it was Austin, Texas. I sold my business. I sold my car. I gave away all my business clothes, pretty much the majority of my clothes. And I even remember this one point, I had a little garage sale in my apartment. And I also had, at that time in Austin, I had a good friend who didn't have a home. He lived underneath a bridge. And there were times when I would invite him to my apartment to get out of the cold, because it can get really cold during the winter in Austin. So he would come over to my apartment and sleep there. And so when I was doing this and leaving everything, I decided, oh, I'll just invite him to come over so I can say goodbye. So he came to my apartment, and I said to him, I said, you see all this stuff in the apartment? I'm leaving it all behind. I'm renouncing. You know, they call it, in India, they call it a sadhu who has renounced his or her life to find God. It's a sadhu. So I said to my friend, who was a kind of avid musician, had been part of a band, I said, look around, you can have anything you want. So his jaw dropped. He's like, really? And he looked up and he sees this, you know, this guitar, like an acoustic guitar, really nice guitar from Spain, because I had been practicing guitar for quite a long time. He said, well, what are you going to do with that guitar? I said, it's yours. So he took the guitar. And it was like that. And then after kind of everything was gone, I had just enough stuff, and I bought a van, put a bed in the van, and put all my stuff, everything that I had, everything that was left in that van. And I set off on the road and just started traveling from city to city and holding satsang. And that was 2012. And now I'm here 11 years later, and I'm still doing it. And I wondered, you know, am I qualified to hold spiritual gatherings? Like what does it take to share a spiritual gathering? Like, I don't know. And then after, I remember the first gathering that I held somewhere like in Santa Cruz, California. I held a gathering there. I think 3 people came, 3 of them, and I think at least 2 of them were my friends. So, it took a while to build up. And we held the gathering, and the energy was out of this world. Something so profound. And I said, oh my gosh, it's working. It's actually working. And then I got really excited about it. And I thought, everyone and their mother is going to want to come to these gatherings. That's why I said Kiara should be here, because this is an extraordinary event. These events are not usual, at least on planet Earth. They're not normal. The spiritual energy that comes through them is transcendent. And Swami Purna himself, I'll explain a little bit about him just so you can get a background. No one knows how old Swami Purna is. And that's because he's an immortal being. Have you ever read the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda? Anyone read that book? One person has. Yeah. In that, there is a being described called the immortal Babaji. And the immortal Babaji will appear on this earth every so often, just kind of appear right in front of your eyes in the flesh and give you spiritual teachings. Usually he'll appear to people who are kind of ready for that, because it's kind of amazing. So, and so he's been living for thousands and thousands of years. And so Swami Purna would be considered a yogi such as Babaji. And Purna means whole and complete, meaning he's what you call a Purnavatar. Purnavatar would be very similar to beings that came down onto earth, such as Krishna or Ram or Buddha. Those beings who are complete and whole. They represent all spiritual paths, all traditions. And so it's amazing, even if you come across such a being as that, because, as you know, Krishna himself is legendary, having, the whole Bhagavad Gita, the most sacred book on the planet, and his conversation with Arjuna. So you're talking about a being who has gone beyond, and they call it a descending being, meaning, unlike us, we're trying to ascend, meaning connect to spiritual energy to raise our consciousness into higher dimensions. But there are some beings that are like pure emanations of the divine coming down onto earth, and there's no need for them to so-called do any spiritual work. They're already free. So when a gathering is blessed by such an avatar, now that is rare and incredible, because they represent all the paths. No matter whether you're walking Kundalini path or Hatha Yoga path, or you're walking Christian path, or you're walking the Muslim path, or any path that you can think of, that being can initiate you into that path. So Swami Purna comes through and blesses each person according to where they're at and what they need in order to grow spiritually. And I just kind of sit and go, wow, because I don't know how any of it works, and therefore I call it mystical. Mystical. Sometimes you receive a mantra from a great avatar. If so, that mantra is like gold, because it's a piece of that avatar that they're giving to you. Now you have it in your pocket. So whenever you chant it, you're invoking that presence, that energy, that divinity in your life. So when we did Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Krishna Bol, Krishna Bol, Radhe Bol, Radhe Bol. We're bringing into the room all of those divinities, those divine beings, to be with us, to bless us. So do not underestimate the power of mantra, especially if it was initiated by a great being. So, and that's why I share. It's very special. So this afternoon, the topic is awakening the heart. So I wanted to share with you a specific mantra for bringing forth the presence of love. Now, does anyone know the Sanskrit word for love? It's prema. Prema, P-R-E-M-A. Prema. And prema, when you talk about divine love, it means that your heart never shuts down to anyone, anything, or any circumstance ever again, no matter how difficult it is. So if you are really in that energy of prema, you have no more criticisms, you have no more judgments, you have no more anger. You are immersed in an ocean of love, drowned in an ocean of love. A good example of such a being was Radha. Radha. This is Radha right here. She is supposed to be the embodiment of prema, or pure love, and the spiritual, we'll call it the spiritual consort of Lord Krishna. So we'll learn now a mantra to invoke the prema, or the love. And actually, let's make it really easy, since you already know this too. So you can sing Premam Bol. We'll have to start easy to warm your voice up. And it's good to sing it aloud, because then it gets infused in your physical cells, your cellular structure gets filled with the light. You can certainly chant it, in your mind, and it will help to work on your subtle structures, your subtle body and all that. But extremely helpful to sing aloud for your own benefit, as well as to bring the energy of love into the space itself, into the yoga studio, into the air. So, Premam Bol. And just sing with me. take in 3 deep breaths, breathing in the energy of that mantra. Filling our body with the light. Filling our mind with the light. So, some people might ask, why is spiritual practice so important? We came onto this earth with many issues, what you call karmas, many things that we need to work out. But it is possible when you walk the spiritual path to clear absolutely all of your karma and become totally free. And once that's done, you don't need to come back down onto earth if you don't want to anymore. Unless you really love to. Because you feel earth is awesome. There are no more lessons that you need to learn. So if you do come down onto earth, it would be simply to lend a helping hand to those people who are still suffering, those poor people on earth that don't understand what the purpose of life is. And indeed, spirituality is the purpose of being here on earth. And we, as humans, have forgotten that. Because we never got an instruction manual when we were born. And we could read and say, oh, okay, now I get it. I know why we're here. You could say that earth is like a karmic washing machine. And simply you go through life and you just go through your challenges and you work on your issues and you try to soften yourself. Until at some point, no matter what the world does to you, you are non-reactive. You are untouched by the problems of the world. Then you would become what you would call a sage. The sage kind of witnesses the whole play of creation rather than in it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and in order to really understand truly the witnessing, you have to break through body consciousness. Until then, we're stuck in a body and suffering according to the body and mind, right? Which is a very dense consciousness. So we come to satsang to purify our being so we can float into these higher states, ultimately to become the witnesser of all of creation rather than in it. That's an important statement. If you're really getting that, then finally, whatever happens to the human doesn't happen to you. Because you are not in here. This is not you. We're programmed and conditioned to believe that because we say, oh, here's my passport, here's my driver's license, and this is me. But that's not you, that body. Bodies are sitting here, but you're not in there. See if you can really take that in. You think about all of your prior experiences since birth. It's all been based on being inside a body and where do I need to get to. Every experience has been based upon this location somewhere in the universe. But what if you're really not in there? And so the sage, when you look at the pictures, is why it's so powerful and helpful to actually look at the picture of the one who is beyond, because they are infinite. So there's no one in. If you see Swami Purna, like there's no one there. He's like he's infinite space. People treat him like a human being, but he is not. There's no human there. There appears to be a human body, but there's nothing. So when you look at and you gaze and you meditate on the picture of the Master, you become like that. You too become purified, and like space. Then, when people come at you, there's nowhere for the words to land. So you're not affected by flattery, and you're not affected by insults or meanness either. You are like space. And then you're a sage. People will come to you for advice because they're wondering, how could you be so happy in such a seemingly difficult or miserable world? They'll wonder,